Yo, I'm live.
No, I need to. Oh,
I'm going to put a tape, if you don't mind.
okay, sure.
Okay, okay. Where would you like me to put it?
Oh, I can actually. Do you need to fix it by my like on a belt or something?
Oh, yes, you've got a...
Yeah, you can just put it there. Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's fine. That's good. Okay. Yeah, sure. Thanks. Yeah. Do I look funny?
No!
Like, do I look like astronaut? Yes. I came from almost space. I came from so far away, as if I flew in from space. Yeah. Wow, this is cool.
Yeah,
I feel like a singer, you know?
that's what I... That's, yeah,
Yeah?
perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Hmm? Somebody else's. I think maybe Olesa. Oh, that's okay. Я думаю, що то не дуже професійно, якщо тут будуть ці. Я. Вибачте, а біля вас немає десь цього? Де можна? Там можна викинути десь?
So, welcome everybody, and thank you to Tenjiwe, who I think very powerfully just brought to life in a sort of somatic way, a felt way, the experience of war and the terror that many people in Ukraine are currently living under. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this evening. My name is Janet Jobson. I'm the CEO of the Desmond and Leah Tutu Legacy Foundation. And I'm really honored to be here this evening with our extraordinary colleagues from Sunseed Art, all the way from Denmark and Poland.
Ukraine.
From Ukraine, via Poland.
Ukraine.
Sorry, I got it wrong. And the audience both here and online. We are live streaming this evening to a broader audience. I maybe will just cover a little bit of housekeeping, which is that if anyone needs the loo, you just head through the back of the auditorium over there. And if anyone is looking for Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi password and username are on the wall. It's been a very long day for me, sorry. So thank you, everyone, for coming to this kickoff launch of the Womanly Face of War exhibition. The exhibition will be here in the Trevor Huddleston Memorial Centre until the 16th of August, and we really do hope that we can bring as many people as possible through to experience the art exhibition. I also want to just say a very strong word of thanks to our colleagues from the Trevor Huddleston Memorial Centre, Reverend Masimola and Violet, who've welcomed us so beautifully into their space. And we're particularly pleased that it's a partnership between the Tutu Foundation and the Trevor Huddleston Centre, the two figures that we represent having such a long and profound history going back in time. We're gathered as well in Women's Month in South Africa, which is a time in which we commemorate the extraordinary power and activism of women. We remember the 1956 march of 20,000 women from various cultures and backgrounds and races to the union buildings to powerfully take a stand, to claim their own agency in the struggle against apartheid. But we also recognize the current state of gender-based violence in South Africa during this month, and we really recognize the extent to which, for many women in South Africa, being South African and living in this country can feel like a daily war zone. And we want to always use Women's Month to both shine a light on the power and agency of women and to shine a light on the continued devastation that women in South Africa do feel. We're very, very pleased to be welcoming, in particular, artists from Ukraine, because as we knew in our struggle against apartheid and as we know just as human beings, art has a very particular way of cutting through the noise, of getting to something truly deep inside our hearts, of reminding us of our common humanity. And that's what we really want to bring together in this particular exhibition with the Ukrainian Association of South Africa and the Sunseed Art Collective, is the lived experience, the human experience of the invasion of Ukraine, particularly on women and children, who are mostly displaced, who've really suffered enormous consequences from this invasion, and to shine a light on their lived reality, the lived experience of the conflict, not just as some massive geopolitical war in which there's many, many different sides and we're constantly weighing up the utilitarian arguments on all sides, but as a human experience, as something profoundly devastating for every single human being experiencing it. And that's what we hope the artwork and the inputs from our colleagues will be able to share with us tonight. So let's kick off our discussion. We're going to hear from our two colleagues from Ukraine, and we are waiting for one more panelist, Anna Moyo from the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. She will be joining us shortly. She's stuck in traffic. But we will also have space for a Q&A, so please do think about if there's anything that's burning on your mind that you'd like to engage with our panel about. So maybe I can kick off with you, Olesya. You are an artist in this exhibition. Some of my favorite pieces are done by you. And maybe you could just talk to us about the exhibition, about how it came together, and what we can take from it as the audience of the exhibition.
Okay, of course. Thank you. Hello. I'm very glad and happy to be here, and I'm very thankful for all our partners. And it's a very big honor for me to present our exhibition, The Womanly Face of War in South Africa. And here you will see the posters of Ukrainian women artists. They create these posters. They all live and work in Ukraine, and they create these posters from since the first day of invention. And we will see a lot of stories and hear the voices and see the faces of Ukrainian women during this terrible war when we will see our exhibition. What is the womanly face of war, and can we still ignore it, or should we look at it with a very honest and open look? And who will we see after that? So a victim, a brave warrior, a mother taking her children in some safety places after she hears the air alarm, or the homeless refugees, or the brave and very powerful women like volunteers, or even a witch. So in these posters and in this exhibition, you will see a lot of faces of Ukrainian women and even women in the war. Because I think that the war cannot be there anymore, cannot be not longer only the concern of the men, and as a Ukrainian war cannot only be the concern, pain and battle only for Ukrainian people. That's why I think I choose a very powerful, because I'm a strong believer of the powerful and international language of art. And I choose this language, and also I'm a great believer of women empathy all over the world. And I think that we can use this language to show even here in South Africa the stories and use the voices of our women, our warrior, savior, mother-to-be, the victims, so you can feel a little bit more the pain, the bravery, and the hope for justice and peace, which I think every Ukrainian woman and women all over the world have. So all artists we have here have their own war stories. They all live in Ukraine and work in Ukraine, as I told, and they have the unique graphic language. But my role, like I'm also a curator of this exhibition, my role was to combine all this poster for some emotional journey you can be part of, and I hope you will enjoy it, and I hope you will have more questions for me about artists and about this women's role, because I'm sure that this question can help us to understand deeply the context of our war and the womanly faces of this war. Thank you.
Thank you, Alessia. And I guess it's helpful just to say that as you look around the exhibition, each artwork does have a QR code in the bottom right corner, which gives you more information about the inspiration and the meaning of the art.
Thank you very much. Yes. You can scan the QR code and see the whole story of the picture. Even in the final and in the, I think, first posters, you can scan the QR code and see all our projects on CITART. There are a lot of posters there. We have a man artist also, so you
Lots
can.
Lots of women and one man.
So enjoy.
Thank you so much, Alessia, and for that brief introduction to the exhibition itself. we're going to call up now, we're trying to bring South African art to the fore this evening as well. And as I was saying, there is something about the shared experience of women as warriors and activists and women as victims that I think resonates in South Africa's commemoration of Women's Month and in the exhibition of these multiple identities of women that you've put together. So I'd like to next call up a wonderful South African poet, Mandisa Vundla, whose work really does center on the experience of women's bodies as sites of war. So beyond geographies of war just being places on a map, that they are often also for women sites in our bodies. So Mandisa, over to you. We just need more rousing response from the crowd.
Oh, wow, thank you. My name is Mandi Vundla. I am a poet everywhere I go. And in Zulu, when there is a bereavement or a funeral or a loss of life, we say dudu to offer our condolences. And I'd just like to say dudu to everybody who's lost somebody in Ukraine. The poem that I'm going to read is titled Gravesite. I catch the news of your death, the way wood catches a fire with your body before it is burnt. You are somebody's daughter, returning to ash before returning home. I keep meeting women for the very first time as passengers of death, as still images taken before their last breath, as dying proof for the living, that the shallow hearts of men can love you into a grave, that the head of your home can lay you down as a headstone, loving you in memory. When a man says he wants me, I don't know if he wants me dead. Men choreograph their rage so beautifully on our bodies. The post office is an opened envelope sealed with blood. You do not know if the parcel you are sending is your daughter to her grave, if the funeral procession will replace her graduation day, and to what degree. Dismembering her body is also cutting short her dreams. Dreaming while black is a revolution delayed. Dreaming while black woman is a revolution denied. A dream with soiled hands and sinking feet. A body broken like a promise safe couldn't keep. We are chasing our dreams while being chased on the streets. We are reaching for the stars while someone keeps reaching for our bodies. At home, at work, at school, at play. Dreaming while black is a revolution delayed. Dreaming while black woman is a disappearing act.
What a powerful contribution. Thank you, Mandisa. And I'm so struck. I often pass by the post office referenced in that poem and think often of Uyanene's murder simply for going to collect a package at the post office. Thank you for that reminder. I'm also conscious, in war zones around the world, rape is often used as a weapon of war. And I know that has been the case also in Ukraine. And Natalia, maybe I can turn to you to really give us a sense of the humanitarian impact of the violence that's being meted out against Ukrainians.
Thank you, Janet, very much. And I would like to thank to the first performer today and to you for the wonderful piece of eloquent poetry, because I think you've put us into this atmosphere that many women in Ukraine are experiencing right now. I'm in general very thankful to the Zinka Kachur and to the Association of Ukrainians in South Africa, and to you, Janet, and the Leanne Desmond Tutu Foundation for making this happen, for our ability, Alessa and I, to visit and to introduce these women's perspectives into this dialogue. I think only when you travel as far as Alessa and I have, you kind of understand how distant Ukraine may seem, to audiences here. But at the same time, when thousands of kilometers can be overcome in just a matter of, one night flight, basically, you understand how interconnected our world is. And as I was flying today, actually in the morning I got to Johannesburg here, I had a chance to just briefly see how a mom with her 2 young daughters were traveling probably here for holiday. And, they were leisurely talking, making some plans, thinking of probably great time ahead of them in South Africa. And I thought that this is probably also something that women of South Africa stood for in their fight, in their contribution to withstanding the apartheid here, so that women would have the chance to just dream, just have that chance for a dignified life, to be able to plan our future and to know that it's going to happen in a way in which we foresee it. As Ukrainians, immediately it brings me to the situation in my own country and the very interrupted lives of women, girls, children, some of them who have become the inspiration for the works of these artists that Sunseed brought together. And I think we sometimes in these works that Alessa has curated together can also see a resemblance of that courage that the 20,000 women had when they marched to the union buildings, because what was in question back then was that they could have been labeled, their lives could have been labeled, and they could have been deprived of their numerous human rights, that something that was not okay with them. And as you commemorate Women's Month here in South Africa, we commemorate the months in which we celebrate Ukraine's independence. And on 24th of August, we would be celebrating 31st year of our liberty, of us, defending our right to self-determination. But unfortunately, this year it's not going to be just only 31 years, but it will also be 6 months of this completely brutal, horrendous war that we're experiencing. And it's a war in which we as Ukrainians are defending our dignity and our freedom and our ability to speak our language, to teach our tradition to our children, to have our own identity, and to be able to practice it. And we are defending our freedom in, and I think, very many same ways in which you will understand it, that to us, our freedom is more important than our lives. And the sacrifice and the resilience that you may see sometimes through the media, that is what Ukrainian lives, communicate. I think in Africa, 60 years ago, South African women choose songs and so many other ways to boycott and to protest. And today we're bringing this poster art as an universal language to communicate these very different roles that we all have had to experience ever since the beginning of the war. And I woke up in Kyiv when the explosions began to sound, and when for the first time in my life I had to hear that horrible sound that we all heard in the beginning of this performance. So in the wee hours of the morning, I had to gather my belongings. Thankfully, my husband was also in Kyiv at the day, and I did not know whether I would reach the safety of my children in another country where they live right now. I have to tell you that I had to put on very many hats ever since. I'm a mother of 3. I have 3 children, but I have to now care for so many more nephews and, children of friends who unfortunately are not able to provide for their children. My heart has been broken many times ever since the beginning of the war, because I had to leave my 85-year-old father in my hometown in Lviv. And he has been a person who's been persecuted for so many times for standing up for freedom in his life during the Soviet times that he doesn't want to move anymore. So when I was leaving him in February in my hometown, I did not know whether I would be coming back to him. And I think whenever you hear about the new level of atrocities that Ukrainian women are enduring from the Russian soldiers, I think I and Alessa and probably so many others are thinking, it could have been me. You know, I could be next, or maybe my daughter could have been in that situation. And 27,000 war crimes have been reported in Ukraine already. It's the deliberate bombing of the residential areas where women and children and families live. It's also the use of sexual and gender-based violence as a true method of war that Russia, unfortunately, is practicing against Ukraine. And while Russian soldiers are raping Ukrainian women, they often reportedly say, it's so that you will not have Ukrainian children anymore. So the entire population of 40 million people in Ukraine right now feels terrorized because you never know where that air siren is going to sound and where actually that bomb is going to land. And while Ukrainians, you know, have been, some of them, and many of them, unfortunately, in the occupied territories, they need to undergo this horrendous process of filtration, it's called. It's where people have to basically tear down their Ukrainian passport, denounce their Ukrainian identity, and say that there's something different than what they used to be before. So I cannot help, you know, to think that what Russia, this new reality that Russia is trying to bring on us, and why we are resisting so fiercely, why we are trying to resist this unjust war against us, you know, with such resilience, is because we have new children being born into this war. You know, as of beginning of the war, we had 265,000 women were pregnant, and 80,000 of them were expected to deliver in the first 3 months of war. And 63,000 Ukrainian children were born already to see basically into this brutality, into these circumstances into which no mother on earth, I think, would want to, you know, bring a child into. And many of them, unfortunately, had to be even being born in the bomb shelter. Their lives may be forever, you know, disrupted, dismantled, and ruined. And Ukrainian women may feel sorrow. They often express it through rage or strength. But it's, I think most of all, it comes through this feeling of injustice as Ukrainians, you know, because we are a very peaceful nation. We have given up our nuclear arsenals so that there would be no more wars on the planet. We wanted to make our own contribution into the sustainability of global peace. And the very country that was supposed to guarantee our territorial integrity, not just betrayed us, but is basically, you know, bringing us to complete ruin and destruction. So this exhibition is about how Ukrainian women are reacting to this injustice. And I think they're gathering all of their strengths, women of many, many generations. There is a story of little girl of Valeria. She's 10 years old, and she's a master of checkers. And she played checkers so that she could raise $700 to contribute to the Ukraine Armed Forces. Or Daria from Vinnytsia, who made a wedding photo shoot when the Russian army destroyed her school. And basically she lifted up the spirit of the entire city that was devastated after it. Or an old lady, Maria, who wrapped her little dog Bonya into handkerchief so that that dog would not shiver from these sounds of air sirens. So in multiple roles and through various generations of Ukrainian women, we see a lot of strength, a lot of resilience, a lot of patience, and we think this is universal. And we think that speaks to South African women and audiences hopefully here. And we hope through solidarity with us, through finding your way, you know, to support our battle against this injustice, we can end it. We can end this war, and that we can bring those responsible for it to justice, because as you all know, everybody feels victimized unless justice arrives. So if you ever ask Ukrainians what we stand up for peace, but we stand up for just peace. We stand up for a peace that can last longer than what we have experienced before. And unfortunately, I have to say that I myself am probably the third generation of Ukrainian women whose lives have been disrupted by previous wars, previous persecutions for standing up for freedom. And again, we all have to stand up from scratch. So, you know, Desmond Tutu famously said that if you're neutral in a situation of injustice that you see unfolding in front of your eyes, you've chosen the side of the oppressor. I have a feeling that women have this intuition and have the ability to see through injustices even more clearly. And they have the strength also to stand up for it, maybe even before some very powerful man can. So I sincerely hope that this series of dialogues and exhibitions and meeting the artists and opinion leaders and just people here, we can build that level of solidarity that will help us to bring sustainable peace, not just in Ukraine, but everywhere. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Natalia. Maybe turning to you, Anna, Anna Moyer, from the Executive Director of the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. I mean, perhaps we could take a step back from just Ukraine and really understand the experience in general of women in global conflicts. How do we really understand the impact of conflict on women as you see it from your perspective?
Thank you, Janet. And good evening, everyone. When we start unpacking violence against women, sexual and gender-based violence in general, particularly how it impacts women's lives as we see it in conflict situations or in more peaceful democracies like South Africa, for instance, really we still have a long way to go in really understanding the impacts from a woman perspective of what it means to be uprooted, to be violated, what it means to experience violence and the trauma that is attendant to it. So I will just speak about gender-based violence in particular, basically, in different contexts, including a democracy like South Africa, a democratic society like South Africa. It is well known, and statistics show that here in South Africa, gender-based violence is really one of the highest crimes recorded in the country. Statistics show us that this country is dubbed to be the rape capital of the world, where sexual and gender-based violence or sexual violations are on the rise on a continuous basis. I think the latest stats show us that 1 in 4 women are subjected to sexual violence. But not only that, other studies show that every 4 seconds a woman is raped in South Africa. And that is really staggering information. But also when it comes to just gender-based violence, again, we are a country that is not so different from countries that are in conflict in terms of statistics, the number of women who get violated every day, the high numbers of femicide in South Africa. So we really stand in solidarity from a point of view of experience, also having similar experiences with Ukraine, when we stand with the women in Ukraine in solidarity, standing with them in support, celebrating their resilience. When we now move to other contexts like your South Sudan, Central African Republic, Ethiopia, countries that have experienced conflict on the African context, again, we are not seeing anything different. Women are really on the forefront of the violations that are recorded in these countries. So this is where we see the transference of the conflict from just the ground to the bodies of women. Unfortunately, when we speak of sexual violence, it's really the kind of violence that has its landscape as the body of a woman. It's the body of a woman that really is the, if I can be bold enough to call it the crime scene, because you collect evidence from the body of the woman about what happened. As you go through the criminal justice system, the evidence sits in the body of the woman. The evidence is in the body of the woman. Even after we have gone through the whole criminal justice system, again, the evidence continues in the body of the woman. We speak of countries in conflict. We speak of issues like child born out of war, which really become a permanent reminder of what the woman went through. When we speak of this violence against women, we are speaking of breaking of family units. We are speaking of marriages disintegrating. We are speaking of trauma that the woman carries for the rest of her life. We are speaking of ostracization that women tend to face after they have been violated when they report. We are speaking again of the kind of trauma that women are unable to tell anyone, because telling someone or speaking in a family, in a community, in society, might mean that you are going to be ostracized, you are going to lose certain social rights and some reputation. So women tend not to speak about their experiences. They talk about things that are obvious, but when it comes to the bodily integrity and bodily security, women tend to shy away from speaking about this. Even the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission, right here in South Africa, to address apartheid-era violations, it took women-only hearings for women to open up about the violations that they encountered during apartheid. In the beginning, women only spoke about the violations that men in their lives experienced, be it men as brothers, men as husbands, men as their sons, etc., because it's not easy to talk about what happened to you. When we speak of countries like South Sudan, for instance, and we talk about the violence that is happening there against women, we talk about gender-based violence, we talk about sexual violations, conflict-related sexual violence, as we call it now in practice, really Africa can stand in solidarity with Ukraine, because we are experiencing these violations as well on the African continent. Women are suffering these violations at a scale that has not been told, even through research that has been undertaken. In the research that has been undertaken across the African continent, we all agree that what has been reported is simply a tip of the iceberg. So we really stand in solidarity with the Ukrainian women on this issue. And again, the resilience of women is shown in how women, even against all odds, against this abuse, still continue to wake up to try and maintain some semblance of hope for their children. They try to be there for the elderly relatives that they are supporting. They still have to, even in their makeshift homes in refugee camps, they are still the ones taking the lead in creating a home, a safe environment for their children. So we speak of the resilience that women exhibit even in times of untold suffering that they may be undergoing even during these times. They are thinking of other people. But before I close, I just want to also talk about what does it mean for a woman. I spoke about earlier unpacking what violence against women means for women. What does it mean for a woman to be uprooted? What does it mean for a woman to live in fear? What does it mean for a woman to experience gender-based violence and sexual violence and be in constant fear of that violence, not against herself, but against her children, her girl children, against the women relatives or women family members in her family unit? What does it mean for her community? What does it mean as well, even for the children, for a woman to live in this fear? Starting with women who then have to flee to other countries as refugees, as asylum seekers, etc. The uprooting or the destruction of the home for a woman is not just the destruction of a structure like we see this building, but it is destruction of memories, of sentimental value objects, of something that she has created and built, a home that she has called her own. It is destruction of a safe place where she can shelter those around her and keep them in safety, at least within what she can manage to do, as the laws permit, as the safety measures are put in place within that environment. We are also speaking of destruction as well of the one thing that holds everything together for most women, as single women, as pregnant women, as mothers, as wives, in many capacities and many heads that women wear. And what does it mean to start afresh in a new country, no matter how good the laws may be in that country? But starting afresh means that it's the woman who then has to create or recreate that safe environment for everyone to exist and feel safe. It is the woman who becomes the emotional container or the emotional holder for every member of the family. Usually, it's also the woman who has to think about what to feed the children, what to do to take care of the family unit. And as we have seen in Ukraine, and it's the case in a number of African countries, men are usually left behind to defend their countries. They are drafted as soldiers. They are drafted into combat. And it's the women who then have to also wear the cap of also being the breadwinner, making sure that everything is rebuilt, recreating that environment for everyone, so that even the men, when they do come back, they are coming to a structure that is existing. Because life has to continue. Life does not stop because there has been war. I think when Natalia spoke earlier, it just struck me as well that, you know, sometimes we think that when there is a war or when there's conflict, life is suspended, but life really continues. And this, for me, has really been put in such stark reality. When I was in Norway in the month of May, and I met one woman who is from Ukraine, who actually told me that she got married in the last 2 months, and how she had to get married. Her husband or her fiancé was drafted into the army. So it had to be a process of her moving to Norway so that they can get married. Because even before the war, people would have made plans, women would have made plans, people would have perhaps gotten pregnant, and all of these have to be factored in. It's the woman then who has to make things happen, even in her place of safety. Women who have their husbands who've been drafted into the conflict, it also means being in constant worry and fear and anxiety of what might happen to their husbands. So for this woman who had just gotten married 2 months by May, it also means living in that constant fear and then looking forward, having to come up with a schedule on when they can meet. And just the journey of moving from Ukraine to Norway clandestinely in order for them to get married is also a journey that is fraught with many difficulties and many dangers. And the same journey is also fraught with many dangers and many insecurities for women who then have to move from one country to the other for their safety as refugees, as asylum seekers seeking refuge in other countries. For women, for instance, who are in those countries, again, issues of backlash, issues of discrimination, no matter how good the policies of the receiving country may be, are never really absent. They are also present. The othering that continues when children go to school, the sense of not belonging and having to build that environment for children to at least belong at home, even though they may not belong at school, they may not belong in the community that they are now in. So there is a lot of issues that women then carry as a burden as they try to hold everything and everyone together. And on that note, really, when we speak about the cost of war on women, we are talking about the cost of war on their emotions. We are speaking about the cost of war on their economic well-being, on their emotional well-being. We are speaking of the cost of war on their families and the family unit and what society puts on women as some of their responsibilities. So we are really talking about the resilience of women in holding up, showing up in these different capacities, even when everything within them is breaking down, and they also need a shoulder to cry on. So to women in Ukraine, we really do stand in solidarity, and we understand where you are coming from, and we wish that we can stand together and put away politics, put away any misgivings, put away any biases that we may have, and really stand with you from a point of understanding, from a point of also saying, what can we do to help as women as you experience this? How can we make your burden lighter as you go through life and navigate through this very dangerous and insecure environment that you find yourselves in this point in time? Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
It's an extraordinarily impassioned sort of call for women's solidarity around the world. We've been speaking today in another forum around building a movement of global people's solidarity with the people of Ukraine, and certainly the angle of women's solidarity is an important one to explore. I'm so struck by your input and reflecting on, Natalia, your really deeply felt hope for justice and peace. and how so much of the South African experience is also how conflict seeds violence into our homes and communities. That we have to think about justice and peace not just in the immediate context of conflict, but also of the trauma that is brought back to our homes by men that have been in conflict. The tools that, violence becomes a tool for communication in homes and in communities, in ways that leaves, as we experience almost 30 years on from the ending of our violent, direct conflict in the liberation struggle, that we experience on a daily basis, that this violence has been seeded into our structures of society and into our communities. And so the work of peace and justice is also the work of healing. It is also very much the work of coming to terms with what happened at war, and what it does to us as people, the dehumanization that is required of us to fight war, even when we're not the aggressor, does something to our humanity.
Absolutely. If I can just build on what you have said, and thank you so much for the profound, really multifaceted understanding of how it impacts us. Since in Ukraine it's about the millions, so it's practically half of the population has been uprooted from their homes in this way or another. Men went to fight, and women had to change location, be it safer location within Ukraine or outside of Ukraine. Within this, we also understand that when somebody says, oh, let's make concessions and agree on this, just, let's agree on some sort of peace talk, what is there to be discussed if this nation is taking 230,000 Ukrainian kids are being basically abducted and kidnapped? What does it mean for the women who are losing them, or for the families who are losing them? And even if they're orphans, for Ukraine as a state, as a country, what future does it have? Or if we know that Ukrainian 6 million moms with kids have crossed the border to safety to other countries, and now is the new school year. So we understand that when the school year is beginning, and we all know that what is most important for moms, it's for their kids to go to school. So once they place them into the school year in a particular country, they will not be able to come back, and some cannot come back because of what you saw has happened to many of Ukrainian cities. There is this terminology of being Groznyed. I don't know if you know of the city Grozny in Chechnya, but Russia has this history of wars of aggression against not just Ukraine, but other states like Chechnya and Georgia and many other places, Moldova. So they don't have places to come back to rebuild, this sense of home and safety and security that can produce the culture of understanding. And we do not want to recreate the culture of brutality that now we see coming towards us through that border with that army. Because if there is something I can say unexpected, it's probably this is one thing we were not ready for. But I have to tell you why Ukrainian women and people were not ready for it. Because our moms and grandmoms have endured so much of it, they were not able to convey all of it to us. Because as you probably know, some of these crimes are so horrendous that they leave you speechless. You simply cannot speak about it. And that's exactly what we cannot let happen. That's why we want to bring these stories of resilience of women, even if they undergo these numerous roles and all of their lives are disrupted. And you're absolutely right. We don't even know how many marriages will be broken, how many families will fall apart because of that. If we want to build a sustainable future, that justice has to take place. Those who created this war, those who initiated this against the country that was completely peaceful and not trespassing anybody's sovereign borders, has to be punished. Only in that way we will have something to explain to our children. Because if that does not happen, what is the narrative am I going to tell to my 10-year-old? That evil can go unpunished? What is there then to hope for in the world? So there are these profound questions, I think, that women that ask themselves, in Ukraine, wherever they are, you hear, what is just, and how do we see safe future for our children? And I think this is where, we hope that these roles can help to bring more dialogue about that.
Thank you, Natalia. We have about 10 minutes for engagement from the floor. If there's any questions that anyone is sitting with, or particularly burning points that you'd like to share. We do have a roving mic that our wonderful team will wander around with.
First of all, thank you so much for your arrival and sharing your experience. It's really amazing. And thank you so much for such a beautiful word about women in general in the whole world in comparing. That's really strong. Women are vulnerable, and so far in the whole world they are not protected. And this is a very actual topic. But my question now to our guest from Ukraine experience, how you were inspired to paint exactly this, from news, from your heart, from general picture? When this idea came to your mind, if you can give a little bit of any of painting's more precise comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll just say on the idea of the exhibition and then let Olesa as a curator talk about the works. So I think when we were discussing with colleagues, you know, we are so passionate and fond of dialogues and of learning of the experience of each other. Because I am a strong believer in the fact that when women share their experiences, together we are stronger. Because, you know, vulnerability of any woman is the vulnerability of all women, and the power of any woman is the power of all women if we get together. So that's why when we heard that you would be commemorating the Women's Month, we wanted to think and reflect and bring, you know, exactly the art reflections of Ukrainian women to South Africa, but exactly as the artist perspective and the curator. I'll let Olesa talk about the works.
So, yeah, here I want to create like some stories. We will see here a lot of emotions of women. So we see the power, the bravery. Yes, we go there and see like completely like down part of the exhibition. Yes, we will see this victim, and here I want to put this poster about responsibility because, like Natalia tell, it's very important, I think, for every woman all over the world to have a justice, yes, because I think that women empathy are very, very strong, and I really believe about it. And maybe my like answer is here in the end of the exhibition. It's two posters. One is the like metaphoric Russian cultural bombs, like not even cultural, but this is like Alyonushka, like cultural, this myth about Russia. And the very strong part of the art, this hope. This is a rainbow the artist see in the first hours she come back from the evacuation. So the Anastasia, she were in somewhere abroad, and when she come back in Uzhgorod, she saw this rainbow android. And for me, it's a very powerful poster because we call it hope, because it's like the women hoping of, yes, of this peace, but not only peace, yes, but peace and justice. And I'm very thankful you for this, speaking about resilient of women, because for us it's also very important message. And I think in this exhibition you can feel it a little bit, because maybe in a which part, yes, because we have a lot of stories about resilience in Ukraine, even about the marriage. Ukrainian women start marriage in the second day of invention, really, like in a Facebook. So yes, of course we have a lot of divorces now. It's another side of war. But a lot of marriage also, and these small children born, who were born in the like undergrounds or in the bomb shelters. So this is like you see this happy face of the mom, and I even cannot imagine this, how it can be, you know, real. Yeah. So and. I think that there are some, of course, stories we cannot put in this exhibition. For example, we think that there is a very powerful faces of Ukrainian, and not only Ukrainian women who wait, because we have a lot of women now waiting, come back to home, waiting their men, waiting their husbands, waiting all the time. So I was in some meeting before I leave, and all women don't saw their husbands for 4 or 5 months. So and they are okay. So they live in Kiev. They have some, sense of humor. We laugh and we eat and drink, but they don't have a family like in a normal way we all want to have. So this is, I think that this is very important topic that we can speak like women by women and understand each other. Because I cannot imagine that there are women cannot understand about the victim, about the raping, or about the violence, or about the people born into, during the war. So I think that it's it cannot be illusions that in Ukraine it happened something in a different way than in South Africa, for example. So,
thank you, Alessia. I'll take another question, and if everyone could just introduce themselves as they ask their question.
Okay, my name is Angela.
Angela.
Yes.
Thank you.
And can I ask something?
I see another hand in the front here. I think we've lost battery on one of our mics. So.
Hi, my name is Sally Gander, and first thank you to all of you and to the 2 performers that performed. It was incredible, and Natalia, I saw your tears and I felt them. What I have heard each of you say is resilience, and when I look at these pieces of art as well as the ones on the website, I see that, but I also see something more than that, which is forced resilience. I think that perhaps it's important, and I wonder if you could comment on this, about not only talking about the resilience of women, which is an incredibly important thing, but how there is, we are forced into it. We see that in this art and in what you have been telling us. I see it in the poems and performances, and I also see it in, you spoke about refugees and migrants. We see it with refugees and migrants here in South Africa. So perhaps, if you can, just the concept of using forced resilience without kind of wanting to speak about semantics. But yeah. Thank you.
I don't think it's working. Thank you for noticing this. It's a very important notion, I think. On one hand, I, as a Ukrainian, am proud that Ukrainians are such a resilient nation. But at the same time, would I want my nation to be resilient if we didn't have to be so? Of course, I think any sane person wants, first and foremost, for people around you just to be fulfilled and happy and safe, and have the ability, if we're women, for example, to fulfill our talents, to be who we want to be, to have this liberty and freedom. And unfortunately, this forced resilience has been part of our history, and I know it's part of your history, and it's been so for years, if not for centuries. For Ukrainians who have had our first, battles with Russia 400 years ago, so we sometimes even say it's not a war that started on 24th of February. It's a war that started, maybe 400 centuries ago, when there would be first attempts to destroy Ukrainian identity, when there would be first laws that would prohibit our language, when there would be first times when Ukrainian poets, Ukrainian musicians, Ukrainian intelligentsia would be sent to, unfortunately very big parts of Russian Empire that then kind of transformed into Soviet Empire. So, and then the famines, the famines of 20th century. Ukraine has lost millions of people in the 20th of last century, and then in the 30th of last century, and then 6 million people Ukraine lost in the Second World War. So for us, yes, unfortunately, it is a forced resilience. It is this ability to withstand whatever life throws at you, whatever system, totalitarian system, unfortunately, that ruled over us. Because even today, when Miroslav Marinovich spoke, and he said that he was a young man, even in the 1980s, right, 1970s, 1980s, where he had to defend who he was, his identity, and he was in prison for 10 years. So it is a forced resilience. We feel that right now is kind of the time of truce. It's the moment of truce. And this is where it brings me to the fact that either we globally, in solidarity, in general, is it me doing something? I guess it's, oh, okay. Sure. Yeah, so I think now is the moment of truce, because it's either globally we all decide that human life matters, it's no longer statistics to previous regimes or whatever. If we feel that the life of the woman is extremely important because, again, of all of the roles and hats that a woman wears and in how she can extend life and have life overcome death, basically. If we in solidarity choose that, then there is future. But I don't even want to imagine a scenario in which, for example, Ukraine loses this war. Because to me, that means that, just darkness and overtakes not just us, but so many other places in the world. Because evil and strength should never overpower, the things that we stand for. Freedom, peacefulness, just wanting to live our dreams.
Thank you, Natalia.
Yeah. Thank you.
One last question, Elizabeth. We're giving you some exercise for our Mike's team.
Hi, great. Thanks, Janet. My name's Elizabeth. I'm going to bring in an issue which I know at the webinar earlier today you said this is not about geopolitics and it's not about politics. But I work for the South African Institute of International Affairs, so I'm going to do that. But firstly, to say this has been an extraordinary engagement and dialogue, and I'd like to thank our two Ukrainian colleagues for sharing it with us on this very special month, Women's Day, and then also to you in terms of our experiences here in South Africa and the continent. But perhaps two observations, maybe not questions. The first really pivots off what you've just said, Natalia, going back to it's 400 years. And one of the big problems I think that we face globally is that in a number of parts of the world there is almost too much history. So how do you overcome that? When you talk about the Russian Empire, there is too much history there. You talk about the Balkans, there is too much history there. You talk about our own experiences here on the continent, about colonialism and imperialism, there is too much history there. And people battle to overcome that. And it keeps repeating itself, not in the same way, but somebody, I can't remember who it was, I think it was Too Much Wine, that's why I can't remember, but they said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. And I think this is the challenge that I think we need to apply our mind to globally, because we need to be working together, we shouldn't be fighting each other. That's the first point. The second point relates really, and it's picking up on the discussion we had over lunch, Janet, or at lunch, it wasn't over lunch, which is, we sometimes think about these things in a very detached way. So sitting here in South Africa or sitting at the United Nations, we think about these in very detached ways. And we fail to make sufficient the connection, but also the mobilization around what it really means. And we in Africa should know probably better than many others about what war means. And so my question or my point to all of us here today is, you know, hearing these powerful, traumatic stories is so important, not just for ordinary people, but also for states that perhaps are not directly involved and may not necessarily believe they should be directly involved. But if we, for example, as South Africa, are committed to a system that respects law, respects human rights, respects dignity, it's so important for us to get these stories out there much more powerfully, because that's what's at stake. And your point about resilience, and I loved what you said about forced resilience. I think it was the case in South Africa as well. We've been through quite a lot in the last few years, and, you know, everybody says we're resilient, and you say, you know, boy, I'd love not to have to be resilient. You know, you want to be living in an ordinary, normal country. But just two observations, Janet.
No, thank you, Elizabeth. And I do want to ensure my intentions are not misunderstood. I think we must engage with the geopolitics, but the geopolitics alone, without the humanity, have dominated what is a so-called debate about the war. And actually, when you pare it down to the question of people are being attacked and brutalized and are suffering, and we as human beings actually do have power to do something about that. It is not simply that we have no power and that only our governments speak for us, that we as human beings can speak on our own behalf, and that we can start to imagine a global movement of solidarity made up from people, not just states, and that is something powerful for us to imagine as perhaps uniquely Africa's contribution in the context of ambivalence, in a sense, from our governments, that the people of Africa have a very powerful voice that needs to be heard globally, a voice of solidarity, a voice of a depth of understanding of the experience that Ukrainian people are facing. I'm going to give 2 seconds to wrap up to each of our panelists. I'm sure people are eager to see the artwork and to eat and drink and engage more deeply in one-on-one conversation. Okay. Anna, any final thoughts or comments? I think your microphone is still working.
No.
I think it's just Natalia's that isn't.
Okay, thank you, Janet. I think for me, really, the beauty and the impact of us just sitting here and sharing stories, having a platform to hear, to share, to join together, to stand in solidarity, is a powerful one. What you said earlier, Janet, around the need for a solidarity movement, a women's solidarity movement, where we are not limited by the politics of our nations, but we are rallying around issues that are similar, that we're experiencing, the solidarity forged out of our similar experiences, collective experiences, is a powerful one. So I would really would like also in ending to say, we really need this solidarity. I think women, we are well placed to start such a solidarity around our experiences, our collective realities across the globe around what it means to be a woman, both in peaceful democracies and in conflict and war situations, when it comes to the violation of our bodies, violation of our spaces, violation of our safety and environments that are deemed to be safe for us, what it means as a woman to be resilient even when you are facing all of this. I love the coining of forced resilience. And what, beyond that, what do we need to do in order to ensure that our resilience is one forged in pain, forged in hateful experiences, but one that also has healing components to it, so that our resilience is not one that is forced, but it's really resilience that goes on the other side stronger, healed, and more whole. Thank you.
Alessia.
Yes, thank you very much. You know, I tell you that it's very hard to leave Ukraine now because, like in Ukraine, we are very united. So really, like, you can feel it even in the air. So a lot of, like Kyiv is a big city, but now we know all our neighborhoods, you know, we speak in the street from each other. So really, Ukrainians are very united now. I read one article, the Ukrainian philosopher, he told that even the death of somebody unite you with those people, because these guys or women that for you also, yes. So you know his name now, and it's very hard to leave the country for me. And I'm really very happy to be here because I feel this unity here also, because I think that we all share our stories, and I hope we will continue. And I feel that we all are like in one page. We start to be closer, and it's very, very good and very, very good feeling. And I want to tell you one more news, that you can buy some posters we have.
You stolen my headline. I was going to announce that
Okay,
at
so
the end.
I will finish in an emotional note.
Natalia. Oh, wait.
Oh, no.
I'm going to finish up. First of all, thank you so much for bringing up towards the end this question of learnings from history. I think history repeats itself because we sometimes fail to extract, the most important of what it's trying to teach us. And we've been through this cycle, and Olesa and I actually have partnered on so many civil society activist initiatives in Ukraine in the last 8 years, as we were working with the memory of Ukrainians in helping them to better understand our history and the lessons that it teaches us. Because history is history only when we just let it pass and don't conclude anything. But the most important lessons of history, I think, for us are: what is the value of human life? Like, if we can take a look at the history, not through the prism of geopolitics, as you were saying, Janet, but when and in what moments, in how we can defend it for the future, then to me it all comes down together, actually, where for example, the organization that I'm founding right now is called Resilient Ukraine. Why? Because I feel, to me, Resilient Ukraine is the future-proofed Ukraine. So it's the Ukraine that can withstand whatever comes, but it's so well aware of itself, of its identity, of what's important to it, of our values, and so is able to build that global solidarity around the world for also the values that are dear to you, that are very similar to what is important to us, that we can actually defend it. And I think in that, also lies the very strengths of women, because it's those are universal issues. And I'm hopeful that, just as here we can speak heart to heart and have a common understanding, but likewise that when we will speak to audiences and discuss some of these issues, with representatives of other nations who may actually in their own way contribute to the victory of justice and of sustainable peace over this aggression from Russia. I hope that will resonate too, because they also have a role to play, maybe more economical one. Maybe someone will provide more economic help, and maybe we will fight with our blood, and maybe somebody else will provide the condemnation and the moral authority that we all need. And this is what we started today, I think, within those dialogues, because I think all of the people who have sacrificed their lives, who have made their lives to serve the cause of freedom, should now be standing together with Ukraine very, very explicitly. It's the moment of truth. It's not a moment to say, I can wait out on this. I can see how many more Ukrainian soldiers will die or not die. It's this moment where you can still save so many lives, including women and children, and it's the time for us, for all of us, to stand up for that. So I really, really appreciate the chance to have a chance to speak to you about this.
Thank you, and thank you to all of our panelists. Give them a round of applause. So the events today, this evening's launch, as well as the webinar dialogue we hosted earlier today, is the kickoff of a collaboration between the Ukrainian Association of South Africa and the Desmond and Leah Tutu Legacy Foundation. If you'd like to participate in any future events, please do keep an eye out on our social media platforms. There will be an ongoing series of dialogues trying to really cut through the issue to find a mechanism of growing global solidarity for the people of Ukraine. This exhibition is at this venue from tonight, for the especially curated guest list, but it will be open tomorrow until the 16th of August, and then it will be traveling to Cape Town, where we'll host it at the Tutu Foundation offices in Buitenkant Street. So please do spread the word in your own networks to really try and get people exposed to these stories of the women of Ukraine and the ways in which they've brought their sort of artistic lens to that experience. Just as final announcement, we have in the front room, many of you have already enjoyed, but the Ukrainian Association has organized some wonderful snacks, a lot of traditional treats and foods from Ukraine, which I'm certainly looking forward to trying if there's any left. There's also lots of wine and soft drinks, so please do engage with each other, engage with our visitors and speakers, and really let this be the start of a broader process of dialogue and solidarity building. If you would like to contribute to the sort of the efforts, the humanitarian efforts in support of the people of Ukraine, there is a donation box. The Ukrainian Association is working with Gift of the Givers, who we all love and trust as South Africans, as well as a few other organizations. And as Alessia was saying, there are prints of the artworks that are on display. They're for sale for 1,500 Rand each, and a portion of those proceeds go to an organization in Ukraine called Voices of Children. All of the information can be found in the brochures and in engaging with our wonderful guests. But thank you all for your time and your attention. Thank you for reminding me. My bosses have given me the instructions. There's a very short video that'll play, and then let's all eat, drink, and be human together as we celebrate this evening, this extraordinary exhibition. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This war is so terrible that I want to metaphorically heal all the destruction with my works.
Напад Росії на Україну 24 лютого перерізав моє життя, як і життя кожного українця на дві частини.
Ми виконані в мінімалістичному стилі. Дуже проста ідея, якийсь предмет чи символ російської культури чи традиції, і за ним прочитується символ російської агресії, бомба чи ракета чи...
During our exhibition, we can have a closer look at the Ukrainian women, hear their stories and their voices. The warrior, the savior, mother-to-be, refugees, victim.
Я зрозуміла, наскільки цінним для мене є мій дім, мої люди і моя земля. Все, що було до того дня, неначе перестало існувати. Тепер ми маємо лише цей час війни, який мусимо прийняти і де є за що боротись.
Південноафриканській публіці я хочу передати вітання, привітати вас, що ви живете під мирним небом, і подякувати за увагу. Дуже дякую.
I love Ukrainian people, and in my art want to hug them all, want to tell them how much I love them and grateful for their courage.